That is the president's car. Another car directly behind the presidential car. Another Secret Service man spread eagle over them. We don't know. He's got a rifle being pulled back here. Several police officers are rushing up the hill at this time. He has been given a blood transfusion at Parkland.
It's official. As of just a few moments ago, the President of the United States is dead.
60 years ago, an event took place that changed America. President John F. Kennedy was assassinated. He remains one of the most popular presidents in American history, consistently ranking among the best in public polling. Most Americans don't believe the official version of the investigation, preferring various alternative theories, some more conspiratorial than others. It arguably sits alongside 9/11 in significance. America was one country before it and a different country after. Kennedy came from the powerful Kennedy clan, part of the American elite, what you'd call old money today. He was extraordinarily popular, a politician of a new type, a veteran of the Second World War, remarkably open, a gifted speaker. He won his presidential debates on television specifically because he looked exceptional on camera and knew how to talk. He supported the emerging progressive currents of his time. He backed the growing movement for Black Americans' civil rights and met with Martin Luther King Jr. His wife, Jacqueline, became a style icon. From a purely political branding standpoint, it was an ideal image. Kennedy was elected on November 8, 1960, against a backdrop of remarkable economic conditions: GDP growth of 6%, inflation at 1%. But by 1962, the picture changed. America experienced its sharpest stock decline since 1929. Economic indicators fell, unemployment rose, inflation increased. Domestically, his presidency wasn't simple either. He requested new appropriations for health care and social insurance from Congress. Congress refused. Then he attempted to lower steel prices and went to war, genuine war, with U.S. Steel Corporation, among America's principal steel producers. He backed the unions and tried to cap steel prices. A fight with big business means losing the support of American old money. There was also his affair with Marilyn Monroe, which leaked to the press and drew heavy criticism. Americans loved Jacqueline Kennedy. That whole episode, including Monroe's famous "Happy Birthday, Mr. President" performance, generated an enormous volume of gossip.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
By the assessment of American researchers, Kennedy lost one foreign policy battle after another. It began in April 1961. Cuban exiles funded by American intelligence attempted to overthrow Fidel Castro, the Bay of Pigs landing. It failed. Castro's forces destroyed the invasion force, and already terrible U.S.-Cuba relations got dramatically worse, publicly and humiliatingly. Then came the Berlin crisis, when the two blocs stood at the brink of World War. It didn't reach war, but the prevailing Western view was that America lost it. Then the Cuban Missile Crisis. The American establishment concluded Kennedy had caved to Khrushchev. Then the facts. 1961, troops deployed to Vietnam. Then napalm and chemical agents in Vietnam, all authorized by Kennedy. By the end of 1963, the war was costing America $3 billion, and American society had already begun turning against it. Then the space race, which America was seen as losing to the Soviets. Finally, in 1963, the treaty with the Soviet Union banning nuclear weapons testing in air, land, and water.
Relations normalized somewhat, and there's considerable discussion of genuine personal empathy between Khrushchev policy president. On November 22, 1963, at 12:30 p.m. local time in Dallas, on Elm Street, Kennedy was killed. How did Kennedy end up in Dallas? A new presidential campaign was starting, and Kennedy traveled to Texas, a Republican stronghold where Democrats performed poorly. He had won Texas in his first election, largely because his vice president, Lyndon Johnson, had been Texas governor. He was returning to meet with businessmen and elites and to show himself to the public. The visit was prepared at the highest level. And here's the detail that stands out most. On November 19, before the visit, newspapers published the detailed route of the presidential motorcade from the airport to the Dallas Exhibition Center. By 1963, humanity had accumulated substantial institutional knowledge about protecting heads of state, and yet the motorcade route was printed in the papers.
At 11:40 a.m., Air Force One landed in Dallas. Jacqueline Kennedy stepped out in her famous Chanel-style suit, not actually Chanel, but tailored in that style. A suit that would become a defining image of the assassination. She wouldn't take it off until the end of the following day, appearing before photographers with her husband's blood on it. At 11:50, the motorcade departed. The roof was removed from the presidential Lincoln Continental convertible. For a sniper, there's hardly a more convenient arrangement, short of the president walking. The motorcade moved at roughly 40 kilometers an hour, slowing to about 20 on turns, a very comfortable speed for a shot. Kennedy had forbidden agents from standing on his car's running boards as a human shield. He refused to wear body armor, despite his security chief's recommendation.
At 12:30, the car turned onto Elm Street. The Texas governor's wife, gesturing at the crowds, told Kennedy, "Dallas loves you after all." Kennedy replied that he'd never doubted it. The first shot rang out. The first bullet struck Kennedy in the back. The second, 5 seconds later, struck his head, destroying the back of his skull. A third shot followed. The shooter missed. Immediate chaos. People packed along both sides of the street began shielding their children, dropping to the ground, running. Federal agents leapt from every vehicle, covering the Kennedys with their bodies. At 12:35, the president was brought to Parkland Hospital. Jacqueline Kennedy entered the operating room. Doctors told her she should leave, that what was about to happen wouldn't be pleasant. She replied that she had just been covered in her husband's blood and brains. What could be worse? At 1 p.m., President John F. Kennedy was declared dead. At 1:10, the U.S. Senate suspended operations. At 1:11, the New York Stock Exchange halted trading. In Washington, the now widow stood in her pink suit, still stained with her husband's blood. When someone suggested she change, she refused. She wanted everyone to see what had been done to her husband. At 1:55 p.m., a suspect was already under arrest, Lee Harvey Oswald.